Hey, this is Marina from Karlova Design, and in this video I'm gonna show you the tools that I have in my workshop. Of course, the main tool is this one, but if you don't have it, you can't buy it anywhere. Let's talk about the rest. First of all, straight edge or the ruler. It's good if they have cork backing because that gives them a good grip and prevents them from slipping off. This one is exactly 1 inch wide, so I use it to cut the straps, just aligning it with the edge of the leather and cutting the leather along the other edge. This way I get 1 inch strap. Rotary cutters are my favorite tool for this job, and I always use them to do this. I have 2 Alpha and Fiskars. They are pretty much the same. The only important thing is you always have to have a supply of spare blades because dull rotary cutter is no fun at all. Common paper knives or box cutters are also one of my favorite tools in the workshop because it's easy to keep them sharp and they are very convenient for all kinds of cuts. However, the tool that I use the most for cutting everything is the scissors. This is a Japanese Kai 7205 and they are not cheap. I think they were about $60, but they are well worth it and their ergonomics is excellent. They are sharp, they are quality. I love them. This is a very scary thing, the famous round knife or head knife, the one that is closely associated actually with leatherwork, but I am too scared to use it, so I almost just never touch it. It's just laying around being pretty. I know how to use it, I tried, but getting it out of its holster is already a scary thing, so I think I have enough tools to fully replace its functions. I love the sound though. Guess what it is in this ugly package? It's a skiver and it has to be in this package all the time because it's really dangerous to store unprotected. It's a cheap tool, but for those who do not skive too much, the only skiving I do occasionally is just skive down some strap ends, and that's it. I do not skive much, so for me it's perfectly okay. Here's a fancy tool for marking the holes on everything from straps to belts. I find it useful. It's really convenient to have. I recommend, if you do a lot of belts or straps, I recommend having it. And speaking of rotary cutters, here's the one that I'm using all the time. First I had some cheap basic ones, you know, those metal ones. They are really bad on your hands, so if you have to cut like 1,000 holes in a row, like when I was making the corset, and that was really painful. This one is easy to use. It has a container for all that confetti that you can use later for your party. I also have another one. I bought it while I was waiting for my workshop just to have something to work with, but it's a really bad quality, so if you see something like this, do not buy it. It's not working. I am still keeping it as a bad example, but it really wants to go to trash. This is my mallet, and it was a cheap one. It's not gonna last much longer, and I would say the aluminum handle, although it looks fancy, but it's very inconvenient, especially in summer when your hands can get sweaty. It's not good. This is a cheap mallet from hardware store. It's good as a temporary solution for a week or two if you don't have money or you want to start working right away, but yeah, it's no. What you can get in a hardware store is the simple hammer that can be used in many ways in the workshop, flattening seams and stuff like that. Stitching irons. I use only diamond prong stitching irons. I absolutely don't like how the stitching looks with the round ones. I tried French stitching irons, but the holes are too tiny that it's really hard to work with them. These are craft tool marked as 3 millimeters, and they mean the distance between the edges of the prongs. In reality is 5 stitches per inch, and the distance between the points is 5.2 millimeters. These are 5 millimeters, and actually I never owned any fancy expensive stitching irons. I would be curious to try someday, but I don't think I need them for now. These are 4 millimeters and they are used for smaller items. Let's punch some stitching holes and see how they look together and what's the difference between them. I didn't do a good job here, didn't try to make really straight lines, but it's not the irons, it's me. Two of my other favorite tools in the workshop are the strap and punches, which is this round punch by craft tool. It's marked as 1 inch, but in reality is 1 1/16. Hence there are little corners on the sides, but I usually send them off and I don't care too much about this. It's just weird why it's marked as 1 inch when it's not true, but who cares anyway. Another one is called English and it's CS Osborne, and it's absolutely perfect. I can't say anything bad about it. I use it all the time for all my strap ends as well as the round one, and I'm loving it. Here's a bunch of round punches. Most of them are cheap, and just 1 or 2 of them are really good quality, but in fact it only influences the precision, how easy it is to position them exactly where you have to position them. And the sharper is the angle on the end of the punch, the easier it is to aim them exactly where you have to punch the hole. These are cheap ones from the hardware store. They are sold as a set and they cost probably $10 or less for the whole set. They are pretty dull and not really easy to work with, but if you need something to make holes with, they are doing their job actually. It's not that bad as it could have been. This one is also a cheap one from Tandy. It comes with a set of interchangeable blades. The inconvenience is that it's always wanting to unscrew itself, but I use it very often. I just need to tighten it every time before punching. This is a good one from CS Osborne. And when I grow up, I'm gonna replace all my punches with these. Now it may look like I'm affiliated by Craft Tool. I'm not in any way, and I wish I was, because I would love some free tools for reviews. This is one of my favorite hole punches as well. I like the quality, I like to work with it, and it just can't say anything bad about it. And same is true about the next one, which is the buttonhole punch. Very convenient if you work with Sam Brown studs a lot like I do, so I use it all the time as well, and I like it. Now here's another bunch of punches, which are oblong or bag punches, and I use them a lot as well. And I'm gonna tell you that you will see the difference between cheap ones and not so cheap ones by the shape of the holes. Again, my favorite craft tool just does the best job, and it's the most crisp and nice cut of all of them. But you know, sometimes it just doesn't matter when you need to cut out a little slit for a buckle tongue. It just doesn't matter that much. You just need to have the right size. So taking a closer look at all of them, but it's not important really. They are all cheap. They do work. They do a pretty shitty job, and it's better to have them than not to have anything at all. But try to choose wisely and do not buy these, because these, besides being bad themselves, they also break. I have a couple of them broken. Here you can evaluate by yourself that the cuts from those cheap things are not beautiful at all, and let's compare with the craft tool. I have read some bad reviews from people, so they say they are dull, they do not do a good job. I don't know, maybe that's a different batch or anything, but mine has been perfect since I got it, and for a few years I'm super happy with it. Now let's talk about the thread. Most of my thread is 0.6, 0.8 millimeters waxed braided polyester, and I like it to be more heavily waxed. And this is twisted nylon. The problem with this twisted nylon is that the ends would often untwist, making it a pain in the ass to thread the needles. Speaking of which, I usually choose the smallest needles available because they're much easier to pass through those little holes that are made by diamond tishing irons. And I always keep a good supply of needles because they bend, they break, etc., etc. Now sometimes, especially when stitching through a few layers of leather, it's hard to pull the needle through the hole, so this is another little useful tool in the workshop, which is the bent pliers with springs so they stay open. This is an important part, and I use them very often. If you've seen my tutorial videos, you might have noticed that I really use them a lot. In my work, I only use these rivets, and setting them requires special tools. Let me tell you about those tools. I have a custom-made anvil because I couldn't find any anvil anywhere to buy. So the anvil is essential for setting those rivets. And this is a common rivet setter. However, I do not really recommend it. This thing really leaves an imprint on the leather, and it's not good. I don't care too much about it, but it's not beautiful. The domer, as you see, that little domer on the standard setter is too big, so I had a custom-made domer for myself in the same shop that made an anvil for me, and this domer works just perfectly for me. While I couldn't use the standard domer at all, I don't know how it's supposed to be used because it doesn't seem to be working. Now we need to trim this post, and this tool you can get from your local hardware store. Just get something good, because your hands will thank you later. And some people just smash this with a hammer to make it flat. I don't like that look. I use my domer to make it round and nice. Now, speaking about making things look nice, here's sandpaper blocks, 36 and 200, and these are pieces of the sandpaper for the sander, 60 grit, and I always sand stuff after cutting and before burnishing. But after sanding, your edges may become hairy, and some people burn them on fire. I prefer this method, and it's been working for me really fine. For burnishing, I only use Toconol. I think this is the best stuff. And before, when I just started, I used a piece of canvas to burnish the edges. Now I use the wooden burnishers, which work much better than a piece of canvas, so I do recommend getting one of those. However, a piece of canvas is always on hand in my workshop because I like to burnish the surface of the leather as well, to give it some patina and gloss. And these are silver leather marking pens. I think I got it from Tandy, but they're probably made in China. And they are also a very convenient tool that I use all the time. Just don't use it on untreated veg tan, because it's very difficult to erase them from there. On any other leather like Crazy Horse, oil tan, chrome tan, it's perfectly fine. The scratch out doesn't need a special introduction. It's a convenient marking tool as well. It's just not as easy to erase as the marking pen. Seam ripper is my best friend, and it's really useful when you screw something up and need to rip it apart. And this one is a really nice one, made of brass. You can carry it around your neck. I lost the ring somewhere, but I like it. Lighter is used to melt the ends of the thread. It's very important to choose the right color. No, just kidding. If you use patterns a lot, keep a supply of masking tape. This is 1 inch. I like 3/4 or 16 mil, but I can't find it anywhere. And this is a two-sided tape, also known as basting tape, which is useful to keep stuff together before stitching, like zippers, for example. Just try not to stick it below your stitching line. You don't want to get your needle through the sticky stuff. And it's not very strong. Of course, it's not permanent, but I like it more than the glue. It's not as messy as the glue, and in most cases does the job perfectly. And this is one of my first cases I ever made out of leather, and I keep here different setters for grommets and for snaps and such stuff. I only use a few of them. These are the only ones that I use regularly. These I use from time to time as well. And this is my branding iron, which I use with two of my smaller stamps. The big stamp is used in the big heating press. And there is also a steel brush included for cleaning the stamps, which is good to do from time to time. And please pay attention which end you put it into the pocket, because putting it bristles out will result in punched fingers. This is a handle for wet stamping if we using veg stamp. So that's pretty much it, and the case for it is also one of my early works, and I'm still using it. Now, this is not an essential tool, but it's handy when you need some laces, and let's try to make some laces out of scrap leather. It works the best with stiff leather, because cutting the lace out of soft leather is a pain in the butt. So let's take a piece of stiff scrap leather and try to make some lace. First of all, you need to make a hole, a round hole in the middle. This punch is a little too small, so I'm gonna enlarge it with the scissors. The hole doesn't have to be perfectly round, just big enough to allow the lace maker to go through. Positioning the blade away from you, start cutting the lace this way. I don't know, it's hard to explain exactly, just watch what I'm doing. And listo, we just got some lace out of a piece of scrap leather, which is, I don't know, a couple of meters at least, and so it's a nice little tool.